Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. On this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the sports industry. Today, we're going to talk sports and sports betting and gaming with Thomas Allen, Managing Director of Equity Research at Morgan Stanley. Thomas, welcome to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you. Excited to be on it.
Yeah, really excited to have you and excited to hear about all the things that you're doing at Morgan Stanley and your thoughts and opinions on the gaming industry, the sports betting world, and just all the things that you look at Morgan Stanley. So I think it'd be a great way to kick it off is just to share what it really means to what you do at Morgan Stanley.
Thanks, Wayne. So as a research analyst, my team and we analyze the sector, right? Our main clients are institutional investors, so mutual funds, hedge funds, pension funds, and our focus is specifically gaming, lodging, and leisure. Leisure includes cruise lines. And so, we take views on stocks and on sectors. And so, we'll either be recommending, what we call overweight a stock, which means you should have more of your portfolio in the stock or less of your portfolio in the stock. And we sometimes have attractive views on sectors, meaning we think that you should broadly invest in that sector, or we can have negative views on sector, which, it's pretty clear what that means.
So is that when you talk about the sort of, you see Thomas Allen, Morgan Stanley, buy, sell, hold, those types of things? Yeah,
Morgan Stanley goes overweight, inline, and underweight. Overweight, equal weight, and underweight. Because we tried, to have, it's more how much of your portfolio should you be overweight a stock or underweight a stock.
Got it. So how do you go about doing this? How do you do the research? Is it in-person interviews? You mentioned right before we got onto the show here, you mentioned you just came back from London. You were at the ICE show, which is the big casino and gaming conference in London. What are some of the tactics and ways that you go about learning about, figuring out how you're going to decide how you feel about a certain company?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things, right? What people generally think of research analysts, they generally think of quarterly earnings, right? So public companies report once a quarter, and they get information from that. I think that from my standpoint, that's helpful, but there are lots of people on those calls that they only happen once every 3 months. And so we try and do a lot of proprietary research. On the data side, we get a lot of third-party data for things such as app downloads, or we use GeoComply data to see the number of pings in certain states to try and figure out how large a state is and how large it can be. We talk to a lot of people, right? So we went to ICE, as we talked about. You and I had a very nice lunch this summer with investors just talking about your views on the sector. It's a lot about networking and getting information, obviously all public information. So as research analysts, we only operate on public information. On the sectors, so that we can have a more educated view. And then look, I came from University of Pennsylvania. I have a economics degree, so a good amount of there's a good amount of work it's done just like modeling and forecasting out things that is part of the job.
Got it. I mean, so if you look at, what are some of you mentioned you were, across the gaming industry, look at the public companies in the sector. What are some of the names that you cover personally?
Yeah, so in the gaming space, I cover DraftKings, MGM, Caesars, Wynn, Las Vegas Sands, Boyd, Penn, SportRadar, GLPI, Vici, and MGP, but they're in the process of getting acquired by Vici. Our European analysts, and actually this I should have mentioned earlier, Morgan Stanley is very focused on collaboration. And so I work a lot with my international colleagues. And so we have a great analyst in the UK called Ed Young who focuses on the gambling names there. And no, he covers stocks like Flutter and Entain and Evolution and companies like that.
So when you look at all these companies, since when PASPA was overturned in May of 2018, a lot of those names were pure casino companies. They had sports betting, most of them in the state of Nevada, and now you have over 30 states that have sports betting across the country. Many of those names are playing in that world. What's happened, and how have you had to look at these companies differently, or haven't you? Yeah,
what's been nice about it has been, U.S. gaming was actually a pretty mature industry pre-PASPA repeal, right? If you look at Las Vegas revenue, or if you looked at regional gaming revenue, it was typically GDP or even GDP minus growth. And so it's been refreshing to now all of a sudden be really focused on what is a growth market. We value the online sports betting and online gambling part of the business completely different than how we value the brick and mortar casino part of the business, right? So brick and mortar casino business, we really focus on like near term, next year or so cash flow and value it on that. Versus with online sports betting and online gambling, given how fast things are growing, we generally value things on 2025 cash flow, and so far a long way out. What's been super nice about this has been the way it's attracted a new crowd of investors. And so historically, most of my time was talking to direct counterparts who, they looked mostly at gaming, lodging, and leisure. Maybe some looked at broader consumer. With the legalization of sports betting and online gambling, I talked to a lot of internet investors. I talked to a lot of media investors who see it as an attractive growth market.
And if you could share with us, what are some of those conversations like with these new investors that typically weren't looking at your sector and now have interest, and where do you see things going in that world?
Yeah, so in 2018, 2019, first half of 2020, the focus was really around TAM. It was just how big can this be? How fast can this legalize? And, one of the reasons, like one of the things that we pride ourselves in for our research op is we spend a lot of time figuring out the regulatory, or trying to figure out the regulatory side of things. We speak to some of the leading lobbyists in the sector. We work a lot with Vici gambling compliance, and other kind of experts in this field, because that's a big deal, right? And that's something that a lot of internet and media investors haven't had to deal with in the past, right? They've never had a state-by-state rollout of a sector. It's just been, is there consumer demand for this product or online product or not? It hasn't been, oh, wait, will California legalize or will California not legalize? And why will it legalize, right? And so there's been a lot of focus on that. In the past 12 to 18 months, there's a lot of focus on CAC, LTV, marketing spend, terms that I wasn't used to using back in my brick and mortar casino days. But now it's a lot of trying to figure out, when these companies can flip to profitability and how profitable will they be once that happens.
Has there been anything that has really surprised you so far with the rollout now of sports betting across the country?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I mean, I think when we first came out with our estimates in 2018 for the U.S. sports betting market, just sports betting, we thought it would be a $5 billion market. We now think it's going to be a $13 billion market. Spend per capita has been way higher than we expected, and legalization has been way faster, right? I mean, I always give the anecdote that I think the first casino to legalize outside of Nevada was New Jersey in 1978, and we're sitting here in 2022, and I think 42 or 43 states have physical casinos, so it's been about one a year. It's three and change years since PASPA got repealed, maybe almost four, and I think 34 states have legalized sports betting. I mean, pretty incredible. iGaming, we've only had 7 states legalize since 2013. So that's much more similar to the physical casino rollout than the sports betting rollout. And so, that's definitely been something that surprised us to the upside.
Well, here where we are at 76 Capital, we're based, outside of Philadelphia, and Penn National is based here. You have a state casino like Parks, which is just based here in Pennsylvania, but has internet operations in other states. But Parks just did a sports book inside of a sports bar called Chickies and Pete's, and it's in a suburban shopping center, and it's the first kind of standalone sports bar with a sports book inside of it. It's really interesting to see that there's news now of DraftKings opening up sports bars around the country. Is this something that you sort of thought was going to happen, or these are other types of things that are just all this new innovation and new types of opportunities and things that are just happening across the country today?
Yeah, you missed out the Barstool Sports Bar in Philly, which, we're coming to Philly on May 11th, and I hadn't checked it out yet, so I'm excited to go see it. So, look, I mean, you bring up an interesting topic, right? Because the majority of sports betting licenses that have been given to physical brick and mortar casinos or online, right? And I think that's been very deliberate from the regulators. We met with the AGA last week. They obviously care about the long term of the industry, and I think there needs to be a delicate balance of doing things like that because as you and I know, the UK and European markets are getting regulated pretty severely now, and one of the big reasons why they're getting regulated pretty severely is because just how front and center gambling and sports betting advertising has been. And a part of that has been betting shops, right? Has been kids are walking down the street and they're like, Mom, what is that shop? What is that? And, as we all know, the sports betting and gambling is typically for, a certain age group, above a certain age group. And so, I think that most states have been, more measured in allowing for sportsbook brands to have sportsbooks in, more retail-like locations. The fact that everything's online, though, makes it so you can kind of have a balance, right? You can have a Barstool bar, which is not really all about sports betting. It's about Barstool, the sports brand. And then, because everyone bets on their phones, you get the kind of the betting side of it, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see this. I mean, you think about, are there, and then there's obviously rumors of a number of large other brands that want to come into the industry that haven't yet. There are the big tech companies, that also are. What kind of play will they make? What will, what will Apple or Amazon or, Google, how will they play in this in the future? Or will it just be that you use your Google phone or your Apple phone just to be able to access online betting, or will they play a bigger role? Do you look at those names?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's so our internet analyst cover or software analysts cover those names, but or tech hardware cover those names, but it's obviously a consideration that we have to think about, right? And what we feel good about from our coverage universe for the MGMs, DraftKings, Caesars, Penns of the world is that this is a highly regulated industry, and while the opportunity is very large for like the companies we cover, it's not very large for a $1, $2, $3 trillion company, and the regulations are harsh, and so we don't think that those large behemoth internet software type companies are going to come in, given the regulatory side of it.
Got it. Are there other companies that you're keeping your eye on that potentially will jump into this game?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of press about Fanatics looking to get into the industry. They obviously hired Matt King and some other very big talents. There's ESPN. There were a lot of news reports about ESPN looking to partner with a sportsbook. And so yeah, we think that there are going to be other entrants. We do think that the companies we covered are positioned well. They have large legacy databases, typically, be it either DFS databases or physical casino databases. They've typically taken first mover. They've invested heavily in customer acquisition. And so, we still feel pretty confident that, our company is going to do well and stay extremely relevant.
As you said earlier, you have this opportunity on a quarterly basis to talk to the CEOs of the companies that you follow. Has there ever been a situation where you've asked them a question on one of these calls or something, and they kind of went in a direction that you didn't expect, or there was kind of an interesting story that happened from that?
I mean, the example of it is actually not in gaming; it's in cruise lines. That in February 2020, I asked the management team of one of the cruise companies, how many COVID cases have you had on one of your ships to date? And no, I knew that they had not had a single COVID case yet. And the CEO basically got very mad at me and was like, "You don't know my company. Who are you? How dare you accuse us of having COVID cases on our ships? You should know this. We haven't had any." And I was like, well, I was trying to get you to say that. And I was trying to get you to explain that. But look, in hindsight, I should have realized that how sensitive the time period was. And there was probably something brewing, and there were a lot of concerns around that. But that's the one example that I can give you that was maybe not the most fun experience for me.
Well, when you look at the future now of gaming, and we're all hearing about, and here at 76 Capital, we're investing in companies in the metaverse, Web3, NFTs, augmented reality. How do you think that will impact the overall gaming industry in the future?
Wayne, that's very big picture and like maybe above my pay grade. I know DraftKings has their NFT marketplace business. It's been doing well. I know that Metaverse is something that a lot of these companies are looking at ways to leverage. But, for me, look, this is such a nascent industry from a legal standpoint of, we're just starting to get into new states, and we're just starting to, expand our iCasino offerings and things like that. I mean, that's really my core focus right now.
Well, when you look at as you said earlier, the fact that there are 34 states now that have legalized sports betting, it's way faster than any of us could have guessed it would have moved this fast. But there's still some really big states that haven't gone yet. We recently had New York go, and those numbers are unbelievable. And I think they're pretty eye-popping right now. And from my perspective, believe they're going to get even higher. But you still have Florida, Texas, California, Massachusetts, right? I mean, so how do you believe this will play out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, we have, let me think about how many states we have. I'm going to cheat here. We have 42 states we expect to legalize sports betting. So we don't have every major state that you mentioned, right? So we don't have Texas ever legalizing. Florida, we have legalizing, but only in the way that it did prior, which was basically giving the Seminole tribe almost a monopoly. For California, we only have them legalizing retail sports betting, and so this is gonna be it's gonna be a long path, right? And not every state's gonna legalize. I mean, I said earlier, only about 42, 43 states have casinos. And so, there's going to be, gives and takes.
One of the things that we really believe here at 76 Capital is this idea, the convergence of the physical world, digital world, and you're so well positioned at Morgan Stanley, looking at the the physical casinos, now the influx of the iGaming and sports betting on the mobile side. From your vantage point, how do you see all of this coming together? And I mean, what will it look like in the future from your?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think these things feed off of one another. MGM and Caesars and Penn have all given great metrics behind their kind of omni-channel approach and the benefits they're getting for their brick and mortar business from legalizing things online, and their online business, right, but from having these legacy databases, right? We did a study the other day that suggested that table game revenues of physical casinos have got about a 10% boost from legalizing retail sports books, right? And so, I think that what it's doing is it's expanding the TAM for how big we've traditionally called the gaming market has been. There is some cannibalization of brick and mortar casino revenue when you legalize online casino, but only 7 states have legalized online casino. We only think 11 total will. And the legalization of sports betting is a much, much bigger opportunity for these companies.
Well, Thomas, I really appreciate you joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. And as we start to wind down, I want to make sure that we talk about a couple other things. I mean, I think it's really interesting from your position again, in the opportunity for you to have such great relationships with all of the players that are truly making things happen across the overall gaming and sports betting industry. And I'd love to ask a little more, hear a little more about your trip recently to ICE in London, what you saw out there. Is there anything that you can share about the overall, things that you saw at that big gaming show?
Yeah. So we met with a lot of, slot product producers, other kinds of, electronic table games or table game producers, aggregators. So, obviously the focus was more on the gaming technology side. From my standpoint, I cover SportRadar. So I was looking at, my main focus was on the data distribution side. And so we met with a number of the main companies there, and but our takeaways were, the key message we heard from the data distribution companies was, in general, investors think too U.S. centric, like they think that all we are U.S. companies, when in reality it's a very small part of what we do today. And we have these big global businesses that are growing. There was also this investor perception that everyone is insourcing. And yes, there are certain things that you're insourcing, but there are also, a good amount of things that are outsourced, right? I mean, we had a lunch with SimpleBet yesterday, and we were talking about, their partnership with DraftKings for micro betting. DraftKings also has a partnership with Genius Sports for same game parlay, right? So that's an example of a company, DraftKings, who made a big bet on insourcing by merging with SB Tech, but then finds a lot of things to also outsource too if they think that it's better to outsource than to insource. So insourcing versus outsourcing was a key topic. But look, it was my first time at ICE. I've been to G2E like every year, but I typically hadn't gone over to the UK for ICE. And so I was really impressed by the show. It's huge. I mean, huge. And there was a lot of, a lot of interesting new technologies there.
Well, unfortunately, this is one of the years that we didn't make it out to ICE, but definitely will be, we'll be there in the future. And one of the things that you touched on is sort of the insourcing, outsourcing, all the different companies across the sports betting industry. And as you know, one of our portfolio companies is US Integrity. US Integrity just yesterday announced a strategic investment from Las Vegas Sands. Do you have any thoughts, comments? Or on that?
So I saw the headline yesterday. And so, look, I mean, LVS has been clear that they want to invest into the B2B side of sports betting. I think this, from the headlines I've seen, this is its second or maybe third investment. I haven't spoken to Las Vegas Sands about it or anything like that. So don't have much more to add.
Well, when what
about you, Wayne? What are your thoughts on it? I mean, you're invested in the company.
Well, we're very excited about it, and we're excited to have them as investors as well as strategic partners with us in this. I mean, I think that it really shines the light on the importance of the overall making sure that everything's on the up and up, and integrity really means a lot. I mean, we have to make sure that if we are betting and are you're actually betting real dollars with these games, that you truly can make sure that things are on the up and up, and that you can, believe the results, and that you can make sure that it's a fair, level playing field for everybody. So we think it's really important from an integrity perspective to continue to grow that business, and really proud of what Matt Holt and his whole team have done there at US Integrity. So I think that for us, that's important. The compliance side of the world is very important as well. As you know, we're investors in odds-on compliance in that world with Eric Frank and his team. So and they work with so many of the operators as well to really make sure that everyone's compliant and doing the right thing, so that when you take a look at these companies from your perspective on the research side and looking at them to kind of share with the world what's going on with these companies, that everything's on the up and up, and we feel that that's a very, very important part of this as this industry continues to grow.
Yeah, it sounds like there could be some strategic logic there, right? So if you think about Las Vegas Sands, it's very used to working in highly, highly regulated sectors or markets, right? So it's one of 6 operators in Macau. It's one of 2 operators in Singapore, and obviously has operated in Nevada and Pennsylvania in the past too. And so I'm sure their expertise can be helpful. As a strategic and partner or investor too.
So is there anything that you think we should keep an eye on, whether that's from an investment perspective on the private side of things, or is this something on the public side that will be coming down the pike over the next year or so that we should all be keeping our eye on right now?
I mean, look, the number one focus from the broader investment community is when is the U.S. sports betting industry going to go from, losing a lot of money today to being profitable, right? And the reason why the stocks have not performed well is that, the investment community is not of the belief that it will be highly profitable. And so, we believe otherwise. Like, we believe that this will be a highly profitable industry, but it's going to take time. We're in the customer acquisition phase today. And this isn't just related to the operators. It's the, technology providers too, right? I mean, SportRadar, which I cover, is losing money in the US right now. It has a highly profitable business internationally, but losing money in the U.S. And so, the question and what needs to be proven is that these businesses, the U.S. market can be profitable. And that's a key focus.
Well, we certainly agree with you on that, and believe that there is this industry is going to be much larger and continue to grow and will be profitable eventually. It is at this point right now where it's still early, right? I think that we mentioned it. You talked about a couple of things. I mean, companies are still testing, trying out new types of technology, bringing on new technology, changing out technology. It's still extremely early. And how do you balance that with the way that you look at that? I mean, you think about it, because what we see kind of so many new things that are coming down the pike within the industry, and it's just not. A lot of the new tech's not even mature enough to be in the market yet, but over the next couple of years, we believe it will be.
Yeah, I mean, look, from our perspective, it's trying to figure out, what's going to work in the near term and what's going to work in the long term, and also have an overlay of what the market's going to pay for in the near term and what the market's not going to pay for in the near term, right? And so, from a public market perspective, there are great companies that we are not recommending right now for investors to buy because it's the wrong macro backdrop for investors to own them. And, their valuations may have risk to it, or there may be a unattractive risk reward. We think about not just like what we think something's valued, but we think about the bull case and the bear case too. And so there are lots of factors that people have to think about in my seat. And, and in terms of what the future brings, right? So I recognize for the industry in general that early stages, the way to really do well from an operator standpoint is customer acquisition spend, find ways to acquire customers. Longer term, what drives share once you get to a more mature industry is technology. And so that's why we spend time with, people like Chris at Simple Bet, talk to you about some of your investments, to really understand what is the next technology that's going to move the needle, right? Same game parlays really helped FanDuel, the beginning of the last Major League Baseball season, because that was a differentiated product, right? Now everyone has same game parlays. The next product is going to be in-game, same game parlays at scale. And, I've heard we've spoken to a lot of people about, developing that product.
Interesting. Well, look, the last thing I got to ask you is it surprising to you now, after all these years of following this sector, that you're now talking with and dealing with the major leagues, whether that's Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and how they are really leaning in and are part of the overall gaming conversation? Is that something that's just really surprised you?
I mean, no, in the context of, we started reaching out to the leagues in 2018, 2019, and we actually hosted lunches with some of the leagues and with institutional investors over those years. And it was funny because they were some of the most in-demand lunches I've ever hosted, because everyone's like, oh, I want to meet with, X league, right? So, I was prepared for this, and what's been interesting has been watching how they've kind of gradually embraced betting more and more.
Well, Thomas, this has really been great. I've learned a lot. I'm sure our audience out there has as well. It's been amazing. Thomas Allen, Managing Director of Equity Research at Morgan Stanley. Thank you so much for joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thanks, Wayne.
Now, of course, you got to just go out there and go make it happen. That's what it's all about. That's why we do what we do at 76 Capital. That's why Thomas does what he does at Morgan Stanley. And hope everyone is successful and goes out there and makes it happen. Thanks, everybody, for listening.